on a road where no one stops. One man did, and that single choice, under the burning African sun, would reveal the kind of leader the world rarely sees anymore. The Tao road to Ouagadougou stretched endlessly, a ribbon of cracked red earth, shimmering under the weight of the noon sun. Dust danced in the wind like ghosts of forgotten dreams. Most people hurried past this place without ever looking back. But today, something unusual had brought time itself to a halt. By the roadside sat a man, not resting, not waiting, collapsing. His shoulders trembled, his hands clutched the earth. His breath came in broken sobs that tore through the silence. Beside him, a bicycle lay in ruins, its wheel mangled, its frame twisted, the lifeline of a man who had already lost too much. This wasn't just any passerby. He was a father, a worker, a man whose entire world depended on two wheels that could no longer turn. And not far down that same road, dust rose behind a modest convoy. No flashing lights, no sirens, just a man dressed simply in military fatigues, the kind of leader who walks among his people, rather than above them. That man was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, a soldier-turned-servant, a symbol of hope in a world drowning in broken promises. What happened next would be captured by a bystander's phone, a moment so human, so raw that it would travel across the world, stirring hearts from dusty villages to crowded cities. But before the cameras, before the headlines, there was only silence, and a decision that would reveal the heart of a leader. Ibrahim's vehicle slowed. His eyes locked on the man hunched beneath a lone acacia tree, the kind of tree that gives more shadow than shade. The man's clothes were torn, sun-bleached, patched from years of struggle. Tools lay scattered in the dust, small, desperate instruments of hope. He was trying to fix the unfixable. Then Ibrahim heard it, a sound deeper than words, the hollow cry of a man who has reached the edge. It wasn't anger, it was defeat, and Ibrahim Traoré could not drive past defeat. Stop the car. His words were calm but final. Immediately his security detail tensed. They knew the risks. This was open road, an ambush perhaps, trap. But before a single objection could leave their lips, the door opened. The president of Burkina Faso stepped out, boots sinking into the red dust, walking straight toward the broken man. At first, the man didn't even see him. His eyes were drowned in tears, his soul somewhere between prayer and despair. When he finally looked up, he froze. That face, he knew it. Everyone knew it, but Ibrahim didn't wait for recognition. He knelt, knees pressed into the hot dirt, his hand steady on the man's shoulder. "My brother," he said softly. "Tell me what has happened." The words came out between sobs. His name was Usman Konaté, a bicycle taxi driver, one of thousands who weave through the streets of Burkina Faso, carrying lives, hopes, and heavy loads for a few coins a day. That morning, he'd been hauling sacks of grain when a truck, swerving to dodge yet another pothole on the neglected road, clipped his bicycle. He fell, scraped, bruised, but not broken. The bicycle, however, was gone. Its front wheel bent like a crushed promise. The truck never stopped. And Usman, with 5 hungry children and a sick wife waiting at home, was left staring at the wreckage of his entire life. The bicycle wasn't just metal. It was food. It was medicine. It was school fees. It was dignity. For hours, he'd been trying to bend the twisted rim back into shape with his bare hands, refusing to give up, even as the sun burned his back and the dust choked his lungs. Because sometimes hope doesn't know when to quit. And that's the moment Ibrahim found him. He could have ordered his convoy to move on. He could have sent an aide to help, or thrown a few notes of sympathy and continued his journey. But that's not who he is, because Ibrahim Traoré doesn't lead from palaces. He leads from the dirt roads, where his people bleed and breathe. As Ibrahim stood there looking at the man's broken bicycle, something shifted in his expression. No one around him knew what he was about to do, not even his security officers. But whatever it was, it would turn a dusty roadside tragedy into a moment that the whole world would never forget. Sometimes, a man's entire life can collapse in silence, not with an explosion, not with a scream, but with the quiet breaking of metal under a merciless sun, Usman had nowhere to go. No money, no hope. Just the wreckage of the bicycle that had once been his future. He sat in the dust, his tears carving lines through the red dirt on his face, watching everything he'd built fall apart, grain by grain, like the land beneath him. And Ibrahim listened. Not as a president, but as a man. Every word, every sob, hit him like a mirror reflecting the struggle of his own people. His jaw tightened. His eyes glistened, not with pity, but with shared pain. Around them, the world had begun to stir. Word spreads fast in the heart of Africa. The president stopped, someone whispered. He stopped for the bicycle man. Phones were raised, voices hushed. Dozens of villagers, traders, children, farmers began to gather, circling the scene like witnesses to something sacred. Presidents don't kneel in the dust. They don't stop for the forgotten. But here he was, Ibrahim Traoré, Africa's youngest leader, doing exactly that. Ibrahim crouched lower, his hand brushing against the bent metal, tracing the shattered spokes as though reading a language written in suffering. Years of soldier's instinct told him the truth instantly. The frame was gone, the wheel dead, the heart of this man's livelihood beyond repair. He exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a broken bicycle. It was the face of a system that had failed millions, crushed not by laziness but by corruption, by neglect, by greed. The crowd held its breath. Some filmed, others simply stared. No one dared speak, because deep down they all knew. This wasn't just about Usman. It was about them. His head of security stepped forward, eyes scanning the crowd, hand close to his earpiece. "Mr. President," he said quietly, "we need to move. The area isn't secure." A single gesture from Ibrahim silenced him. Palm raised, eyes still fixed on Usman. He wasn't moving, not yet. Not until something inside this man, this broken father, began to heal. The whispers grew louder. "Why is he still there?" one man muttered. "He'll take a photo, then drive away like the rest." Another scoffed. These politicians, they all promise to care, but when the cameras turn off, so does their compassion. But others saw something different. A woman clutched her shawl tightly. Her voice trembled. He stopped. He actually stopped. A young man filming shook his head in disbelief. This is real. He's not acting." Usman looked up again, his face caught between awe and despair. The most powerful man in the country was kneeling beside him, covered in dust. But what could even a president do? The bicycle was destroyed. His problems were endless. And across Burkina Faso, there were millions like him. Hungry, tired, forgotten. Why would his pain matter more than theirs? Ibrahim rose slowly, brushing the red dust from his uniform. For a long moment, he said nothing. His eyes drifted from Usman's broken bicycle to the crowd, to the horizon stretching endlessly across the savannah. You could almost hear his thoughts. Every choice a leader makes sends ripples, through people, through systems, through history. If he helped this one man, would others expect the same? Would compassion be mistaken for weakness? Would one act of kindness break the rules of governance? The air hung heavy with questions. Even his guards looked uncertain, exchanging nervous glances. But Ibrahim knew something the others didn't. This moment wasn't about politics. It wasn't about setting precedents or following protocol. This was about truth. About the invisible bridge between a ruler and the ruled. The sacred bond that had been shattered long ago in Africa. For decades, leaders had grown fat while their people starved. Hospitals ran dry. Schools crumbled. Roads broke and stayed broken. The rich got richer. The poor invisible. People had stopped believing that leaders could care, that they could feel. But as Ibrahim stood there, dust on his boots, sweat on his brow, he made a silent promise that this moment would not end like the others. Because sometimes, one act of humanity can heal more than any policy ever could. And what Ibrahim did next would silence an entire nation. In that instant, Ibrahim Traoré made a choice that no textbook of politics could teach, a choice that would define his legacy. A few months earlier, this same man, Ibrahim Traoré, had stood before the people of Burkina Faso with fire in his voice and hope in his heart. He had promised a new nation, one where the leaders served the people, not themselves. A nation rebuilt not with speeches, but with truth. But now, standing in the dust beside a broken bicycle, those words were being tested. Because revolutions are easy when you're shouting from a podium. Real change begins when no one is watching, except a crowd of strangers and the camera of a trembling hand. The murmurs spread again, electricity in the air. "This is the test," an old man whispered, and it was. A test not of politics, but of humanity. Even Usman could feel it. He looked up at Ibrahim with eyes swollen from tears, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the disbelief, something flickered. Not yet hope, but maybe the memory of it. Ibrahim's phone rang, breaking the stillness. He glanced at the screen, his chief of staff. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. President, we have a schedule. The defense minister is waiting. The economic council, they can wait." And he ended the call. Every advisor would have screamed at him for this. Every politician would have warned. A leader can't stop for every crying man. But Ibrahim knew something they didn't. If a leader can't stop for one, then his words mean nothing to the millions. He took a long breath, the kind of breath soldiers take before stepping into battle. The principles drilled into him as a commander came flooding back. Take care of your men. Never ask them to do what you wouldn't. Lead from the front. These were not just rules of command. They were the heartbeat of real leadership. He turned to his aide, who stood frozen in the heat. "Get me the Minister of Transport, now!" The crowd rippled, their whispers blending with the wind. Something was about to happen. Something no one expected. Usman looked up, trembling. Confusion and hope warred on his face. Ibrahim's eyes softened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his personal phone. Not the secure government device. Not the one his staff controlled. His own phone. Scratched, simple, human. He dialed. "Minister, this is Ibrahim Traoré. Standing on the Ouagadougou Road, Sector 3. There's a citizen here. His name is Usman Konaté. He's a bicycle taxi driver. His bicycle was destroyed this morning by a reckless truck driver who didn't stop. This man has 5 children. His wife is sick. That bicycle was his only means to live. Here's what I want. 1. A new bicycle, strong and reliable, delivered here within 2 hours. 2. The traffic police will find that truck driver. Hit and run is a crime. You will file a report and follow through." A stunned silence filled the air. Even the wind seemed to pause. From the phone came the faint, stammering reply. Yes, Mr. President, immediately, sir." But Ibrahim wasn't done. He scrolled again, his thumb trembling ever so slightly. He called another number, the Minister of Social Action. "Minister," he said, his tone firm but gentle. "There's a man named Usman Konaté. 5 children, a sick wife. I want his family enrolled in the National Health Care Program. Today. And I want monthly check-ins to make sure they're receiving proper support. Do you understand?" The minister's voice cracked through the speaker. "Yes, Mr. President, it will be done today." The crowd was silent. Utterly silent. Children clung to their mothers. Men stared in disbelief. And Usman, the broken father from the roadside, could only cover his mouth with shaking hands. Tears streamed down his face, but this time they were not from despair. Ibrahim ended the call and slowly knelt again. The dust clung to his knees. He placed his hand gently on Usman's shoulder. "My brother, you are not invisible. Your struggle is seen. Your pain matters. You work hard, you fight for your family, you do your part. And when life knocks you down, your nation must stand beside you. That is what government is for. Not for the rich and powerful, but for people like you." He looked into Usman's eyes, and for a heartbeat the world fell away. No soldiers, no cameras, no president, just one man reminding another that he mattered. He smiled gently. "The new bicycle will arrive soon," he said. "But more important than that, I want you to know this." What Ibrahim said next would make every man in that crowd question what it truly means to lead, and what it truly means to love your country. Every time I sit in a meeting about policy, every time I make a decision that shapes our nation's future, I will remember this moment. I will remember you. Because if our policies don't help people like you, they are worthless. Usman tried to speak. His lips trembled, but no words came. Instead, he gripped Ibrahim's hand with both of his, rough hands calloused by years of labor, and bowed his head. Tears fell, heavy and unrestrained, soaking the president's palm. Neither man moved. For a heartbeat, the entire road fell silent. Then, like the sudden burst of a drum, the crowd erupted. Not in chants or slogans, but in something far older. Women ululated in high-pitched celebration. Men shouted, whistled, and clapped. Some wept openly. Others simply stared in awe, whispering to each other. He called him brother. The president kneeled in the dust, with a taxi driver. I'm watching it, and I still can't believe it. Even Ibrahim's security detail, soldiers hardened by years of duty, couldn't hide their emotion. A few wiped their eyes. These were men who had guarded dozens of leaders. Men who had seen arrogance cloaked as authority. But this was something they had never seen before. Through the sea of people, an elderly woman pushed forward, her back bent with age but her eyes bright with strength. Ibrahim noticed her immediately and stepped toward her, bowing slightly. She looked at him for a long moment, then spoke in Moray, her voice trembling but firm. My son, may God bless you. You have made this old woman believe again. I thought those days were gone, the days when leaders cared about their people. You have given us back hope. Ibrahim smiled gently, his voice breaking as he answered. Mother, it is you who give me strength. All of you. This land is yours. I am only your servant. The crowd cheered again, not for power but for belonging. 90 minutes later, earlier than promised, a transport truck rolled into view. The crowd parted, murmuring as it slowed to a stop. It didn't carry one bicycle. It carried three. 3 brand-new heavy-duty bicycles built for commercial use, shining like hope under the orange sun, and stepping out of the passenger seat was the Minister of Transport himself, his shirt still creased from rushing out of a meeting. He handed Ibrahim a sealed envelope. Inside, money to compensate Usman for the day's lost work and to help with his wife's medical care. Then he presented documents, official papers stamped and signed. Usman's family was now enrolled in the National Healthcare Program. His children were guaranteed educational support. An investigation had already begun into the hit-and-run driver. When Usman saw the bicycles, he broke. He fell to his knees, not in submission but in sheer overwhelming gratitude. Other bicycle taxi drivers rushed forward, laughing, crying, touching the new bikes as if to make sure they were real. Ibrahim stepped forward again and helped Usman rise. These bicycles. This assistance. It is not charity, it is justice. You work hard. You carry our people every day through heat and dust. When you fall, we must lift you up, because that's what it means to be a nation. Before leaving, Ibrahim did something no one expected. He took out his personal phone once more. Give me your number, Usman. Usman hesitated, then recited it slowly, disbelief still etched on his face. I'll check on you, Ibrahim said. I want to know how your wife is doing. And I want to make sure every promise I made today reaches you, without getting lost in the fog of bureaucracy. You have my word. He clasped Usman's hand one final time, then stepped into his vehicle. As the convoy pulled away, the crowd surged around Usman and his new bicycles, celebrating, singing, clapping. But beneath the noise, something far more profound was happening. Within hours, the video flooded the internet. Clips of Ibrahim kneeling in the dust, calling a taxi driver brother. Clips of the delivery truck arriving. The old woman blessing him. The footage crossed borders faster than any speech or campaign ever could. In 24 hours, 10 million views. In a week, 50 million. From Senegal to South Africa. From Nigeria to Kenya. Shared in WhatsApp groups, posted on TikTok, played in cafes, schools, and homes. News outlets caught on. BBC Africa, Al Jazeera, and international, all carrying the same headline. A president kneels. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet ripples that followed. A week later, Ibrahim kept his promise. He called Usman personally. Not for cameras, not for press. Just one leader checking on one citizen. Usman's wife had received treatment at a hospital they could never have afforded before. Her illness, serious but treatable, was improving. The family's home, once heavy with fear, was now filled with laughter again. Usman told his friends about the call. Word spread. And across the country, something invisible but powerful began to shift. People began to believe again. Believe that leadership could mean service, that compassion could still exist in power, that a president could stop just once on a dusty road and remind a nation what it means to be human. Sometimes, history doesn't change in grand halls or crowded parliaments. Sometimes, it changes when one man kneels beside another and chooses kindness over convenience. The children who once walked miles barefoot now pedaled confidently down the road. Their names were on the school register, their stomachs full from school meals, their notebooks filled with dreams. They didn't know it. But their new beginning had started on that dusty road, the day a president stopped for a man named Usman Konaté. Usman had never asked to be a symbol. He had just wanted to feed his family. But his story, and Ibrahim's response, became something far greater than either man could have imagined. He came to represent every African man and woman who had been crushed not by laziness, but by a system that forgot them. And Ibrahim Traoré came to represent what leadership could be, and what government should be: responsive, compassionate, and human. Within weeks, Burkina Faso began to change. Across ministries, from the highest offices to the smallest local posts, something stirred. People were no longer silent. Citizens began to question things that once seemed unchangeable. If the president can stop for a bicycle driver, why can't you fix my paperwork? If the president cares about one family's health care, why doesn't this clinic have medicine? The message echoed everywhere, in markets and classrooms, parliament halls. Even those who had given up hope began to believe again. In Ouagadougou, the bicycle taxi drivers who once worked in fear and exhaustion came together. They formed an association inspired by Usman's story. They demanded safer roads, designated lanes, and fair treatment from police. And for the first time in years, the government listened. Reforms were passed. Traffic rules were enforced. Lives began to change, but not everyone was convinced. Critics came forward, sharp as ever. It was just a publicity stunt, they said. One photo, one video. What about the rest of the country? Their words weren't entirely unfair. One act of kindness cannot fix an entire nation. But Ibrahim didn't shy away. In his next national address, he faced the criticism head-on. Yes, he said, there were cameras. Yes, the world was watching. And that's exactly the point. Let the world see us care for our people. Let the world see a government that responds to pain with action, not excuses. If every leader in Africa, from the smallest village chief to the highest office, had to worry that their response to suffering might be recorded and seen by the world, wouldn't that change everything? The hall went silent, then applause, and across the continent his words began to resonate. 3 months later, Ibrahim returned, unannounced, to the same stretch of road. No cameras, no motorcade, just a quiet convoy. He found Usman again, working under the sun, transporting goods on one of his new bicycles, now scratched, dusty, well-used. They smiled when they saw each other. No speeches, no crowd. Just two men shaking hands, laughing softly in the same dust where it all began. Someone recorded that moment from afar. The video spread again, proof that it hadn't been a one-time performance. This was how Ibrahim believed leadership should work. Years later, the broken bicycle story, as it came to be known, was taught in schools and universities. Professors cited it as a case study in authentic leadership. Parents told it to their children before bed, and young Africans, debating whether to chase personal gain or public service, pointed to it as proof that change was still possible. Usman himself remained humble. He still rode his bicycle, still carried goods for customers, still lived in the same small house. But when journalists came to interview him, he always said the same words. That day, I was at my lowest point. I had given up. And then someone stopped. Someone saw me. That changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone watching. Because now we all know it's possible. Caring is possible. Leadership is possible. Hope is possible. For Ibrahim Traoré, the moment wasn't about fame. It was about reaffirming the principles he lived by. Every meeting, every policy, every decision afterward carried traces of that day. He remained direct, grounded, Unfiltered, sometimes controversial, often challenged, but always connected to his people, because he understood something most leaders forget. Leadership isn't measured in titles or speeches. It's measured in the lives you touch. The broken bicycle that once lay shattered on a dirt road came to symbolize something far greater. It represented every broken system, every shattered promise, every forgotten dream, and Ibrahim's act of compassion became its answer, proof that the cracks in a nation could be mended, one act of humanity at a time. When future historians write about this era, they will discuss policies, statistics, reforms, the measurable parts of leadership. But somewhere in every chapter they will return to this moment, a dusty road, a crying man, and a president who knelt beside him, choosing compassion over convenience, humanity over hierarchy. Because in a continent long scarred by greed and neglect, this story became more than politics, and it became a heartbeat, a reminder that true leadership is service. That power means nothing unless it lifts others. That dignity belongs to every citizen, not just the powerful. Usman's tears that afternoon weren't just his own. They were the tears of a nation, and of a continent rediscovering hope. Tears that watered the seeds of change, blooming now in every act of kindness that followed. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Be the one who stops. Be the one who listens. You don't have to be a president to change someone's life. Every time you choose compassion over indifference, you're creating your own ripple of change, just like Ibrahim did. Leadership is not about being seen. It's about seeing others. Inspired by the true spirit of Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso.